no countdown. We'll let everyone have a minute or two to join in. Get to the comments. Give everyone a minute to. Yep, there we go. We're on Facebook. There we go. So, folks, week 14. We're on week 14. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Week 14, yes. So you're correct. I was nodding along.
It's all right. We're on week 14. It's all getting very, 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 very interesting in terms of playoffs. Teams finishing where they've been for the season. Even chaps, I'm going to introduce them very shortly. But yeah, today I've got Tom with me today to help me with week 14. Do you want to introduce yourself? A bit about yourself?
Yeah, go for it. Evening, gents. Some of you may recognise me from some commentary since last season. Currently coaching over with the Kent Exiles, but unfortunately Micah couldn't be here this evening. So I've stepped in and hopefully we might get some more predictions right than he does, but probably not knowing me.
Yeah, do you know what, mate? It's good to have you. We've been chatting quite a lot. I think what people forget to realise is how much work goes behind the scenes with Sport Tank. But no, it's interesting. You know a little bit more about the South than I would. I mean, we're going to go over it, obviously. It's a bit of a mad one with Div 1 North in terms of the playoffs. Has anyone got a clue who's sixth seed? Is it Surge? Is it Inverclyde? Is it Nighthawks? Who, by the way, had a very, very good victory. I don't know, but I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, it's been a very, very interesting week in week 14. But what have you been up to this weekend, mate? Football-wise?
Yeah, well, we had our game against the O's. Came out on the wrong side of that, 15-8. So not ideal. Not been best season on record. We've had some very good showings in various games, but not quite ended up with the results we wanted. But hey, we can get into that a little bit later after we go and unpack the rest of the divisions. And need to hear some more about the North. It's very easy to get your head down, just focus on your situation. So be interesting to hear a little bit about what's been going on up there from you.
Yeah, well, we've got a comment there, actually. Someone was asking what the hell bloody happened. Do you want to go into it? Like
we'll save it when we get to it. Right. Let's crack on forward. You know, we got too many divisions to cover. We got lots to go into. So hold your question, Adam. We'll get to it, I'm sure.
Oh, I like this already. Okay. Well, listen. It's a bit of a mad episode this week because we've obviously got the games to go over. But there's only 2 games next week. Boom. End of the season, isn't it? We're coming towards it. So we'll go straight into it with the week 14. We'll have a bit of a chat about it, and then we'll talk about the very few games and go from there. So, straight into Division 2 West, we had the Cornwall Monarchs against Swindon Storm. If I'm looking at my little bit of information here, 60% of the public for Cornwall Monarchs were going to win, and they didn't. Swindon Storm won 9 points to 7. Any thoughts on that one, mate? You mean it's closer to your end than it is mine?
Yeah, not my specialty, but I think quite an interesting battle on paper, yes. I mean, when you look at the amount of points that both the teams sort of scored and what they've given up, from what I've been able to look into, seems like Cornwall sort of basically have twice as much scoring in their games as Swindon have this year. So obviously a clash of styles in that one. And yeah, I mean, at this level, you know, anything can happen on game day. Wrong bounce of the ball and suddenly it's 9-7. Anybody that was there, I'd love to hear if that was like whether that was a safety or whether that was a field goal that kind of swung the game in favour. Get a little bit more context about what happened there. But yeah, I mean, it's quite tight clearly for that second playoff spot in that Div 2 West.
Yeah, I mean, going off the pundits' predictions, I myself picked Cornwall Monarchs, and unfortunately, the only person that picked Swindon was Micah. and he got that absolutely spot on. I mean, I don't know if BAFTA's website is up to date because it's showing Swindon have played 5 games. I'm pretty sure that division has now finished. But look, it's a bit of a mad league. Obviously, Plymouth, it's their first year after being associate. They started really well and they kind of dipped. Yeah, there you go. We've got a comment there from Richard Wesley. There was a safety. Okay, that explains quite a lot.
Yeah, and I think just looking through, I think that means that Swindon then finish on 4 and 3. So I think they finish number 2 in that division behind Hereford.
So that would put, if I'm right, who's there likely to play? So
so it'd be the Oxford Saints as the winner of the East.
I tell you what, they look really good, Oxford, this year as well. But no, very, very good win. Obviously, a lot of people backed. It wasn't overwhelming. There's some of these score predictions where it's like 90% to 10%. So it wasn't. Yeah, Swindon have 4-3. Swindon 4-3 have Cornwall 20th winner decides second seed. Oh, that's going to be a very, very interesting game.
Do you know what? It's been really cool how the fixtures have shaped out. There are quite a lot of those types of matchups where it is teams playing for the division in the final week of the season. Maybe BAFTA just released a script this year. You know, the NFL's been releasing their scripts for a few years. Maybe BAFTA started putting together some scripts, and it's just been an underground secret to some of us.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's clear the league's not clearly wrapped up like there are other leagues. It'll be interesting. I do think whoever's finishing second has got a tough trip to Oxford Saints, regardless. But we'll see what's going on. Into the other result in that league, Hereford Stampede 19, Plymouth Vanguard 14. I think everyone picked Hereford, but that score clearly says Plymouth had a pretty decent game. 80% of the public picked Hereford to win, but it wasn't really that of an overwhelming scoreline. So something for Plymouth to sign off the season with. They can't get relegated. They finished all the games. So yeah, it's good result for Plymouth considering where they are. You know, at this time of the season, you get so many teams who players just go, I can't be bothered travelling on a Sunday to get beat. So, you know, you'll see ridiculous scorelines. That's a very good scoreline for Plymouth in terms of, you know, where they are in the position. Dust themselves off, recruit well in the summer, go into next season.
Yeah, exactly. I think sometimes results like that, they don't feel like they matter too much for this season, but I think for the guys who do show up, they do work hard and they do put their effort out to try and get a result in a game that ultimately is meaningless for them. Like, you know, that matters at the start of next season, how things roll through. And, you know, obviously there's work that Plymouth are going to have to do to kind of keep things together and make sure it does go and translate. But it's a much better feeling than when you sort of just stink it up and guys just start to check out. So positive for them. I mean, it'll be interesting to see whether Hereford, you know, whether it was a case that maybe they were just sort of trying some new things for the playoffs. Maybe they were easing up a bit and resting.
Comment right.
Goes.
So we, Hereford, made sure all of our players got good game time. Can I just say, I absolutely love that because, I mean, we spoke about this last week. If I'm a player and I've not got much game time, and it's not a cheap sport, it's a very expensive sport. It's so time consuming. But if I'm a player and you're saying to me, look, we've got playoffs secured. I know might not be that in this case, but well, it is that in this case, sorry. But, you know, we've got a playoff game. You want to play that playoff game, show them what you can do now. And you get them players giving that extra bit and you'll see something, you know, that you haven't seen in training. Game day, you know, can be very, you know, indifferent to training. So, you know, I love to see that. I really do. But Hereford looking really good. Who is it Hereford likely to play?
So Hereford, I think, will be playing either Ipswich or Ouse Valley. I'm just going to double check to see whether they actually played this weekend. I don't think so.
No, I think there's two Prem games this weekend, mate.
Wrong division. Sorry, let me flick across. Yeah, no. So I think I'm not sure whether that's whether they play what they play again in the SFC East. But yeah, looks like either Ipswich or
Ipswich. Had it confirmed. I love it when you confirm.
There we go. That's nice and easy then. Yeah, that will be. Oh, that's a bit of a journey for Ipswich. That's going to be a tough one, I imagine, for them. But you never know what can happen.
Yeah, interesting one. Right, well, we're going to move up. We're going to move up to the NFC 2 Midlands, where Leicester Panthers were at home to Lee Miners. Leicester Panthers won 57-0. I believe this game was called off due to an injury of some sort. I'm not going to go into it. Leicester, look, it's a league I play in this league. Leicester have got a very, very good setup there. Lee Miners, they've just not had the numbers all season. So listen, kudos to Lee for travelling all that way with such low numbers and finishing the season. I think anything like that, it's hard because you see clubs fold. It shows character. Hopefully, because I know they've recruited a lot of rookies. Hopefully, they can do well in the off season and come back with a bang. Because I think it was, I'm not sure if it was not last season, season 4. Lee were in the playoffs. Lee do quite a lot well in terms of social media presence, in terms of how it's run. I think the problem there is I think it's just trying to get all the coaches, and it's not the case that there's coaches there to get. It's hard to get coaches who still want to stay in the game, giving up your Sundays. But 57-0, Panthers look really good. I feel sorry for whoever's got them in the playoffs. However, their potential relegation promotion game, if they were to beat the team in the playoffs, changed. We'll talk about that later. And I think that's now a very, very difficult game. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it, just based on how football is in this country and the way that the league is set up, you're just going to have those situations where there are teams that just don't quite have it for that season. And it doesn't matter whether they've got good setup and whether they do the right things. They're just not going to be as competitive as they want to be. And so obviously it's a shame when that happens. But I think as long as when you have a club like that, I think if you can take pride in doing the right things and being in a space so that, when things are a little bit in a better situation, you get that good year of recruiting, you're able to then put a competitive product on the field, you can try and go on and build from that, then, that's all you can really do. Like, even the best teams have the bad seasons and you just got to keep yourself steady,
I think what people forget is how many teams are within our area. So, join the third team in the field. Okay. How long do you travel to your team, if you don't mind me asking?
Just under an hour, but
okay.
Obviously
let's say it's an hour, yeah? Okay. If just off the top of my head, from where I live, the teams that are within an hour of me are the Titans, the Nighthawks, Chester Romans, Staffordshire Surge, obviously Lancashire Buccaneers, Lee Miners. You get where I'm coming from. So there are quite a lot of teams, but there's also a lot of teams that have folded. So Crewe Railroad, there's Halton Spartans, there's other teams that have folded. And when them teams fold, some people just give up the sport for good. So, you've also got Rossendale Bucks. Rossendale have done really well on social media, and it's another team in that area. And look, I've spoken to many people and I've said it many times, every major town and city should have a team. But there are quite a lot within it. So what we as a clubs, all the clubs need to do is A, promote the sport more. B, recruit more, try and keep players involved. There's players that go to teams as well. They just know not going to get time. I'm not going to name them teams. It's a bit of a mad one, but yeah, it's look. Lee will definitely come back bouncing from that. We'll see what happens. I've got a lot of mates there, and it's a shame to see the season that they've had. But let's move on to the NFC 2 North, where Darlington's team beat the Doncaster Mustangs 28-20. Very, very close game. Any thoughts on that one, mate?
I think, it's quite good to see that at least the teams at the bottom are being really competitive and giving it a good battle. Obviously it would be really easy for teams to just be packing it in and just, game ends up like 7-0 because something weird happened. But no, it clearly, teams tried and gave it a good effort. And, that's what you want to see late in the season. You want to see teams keep pushing.
Yeah, I mean, 77% of the audience picked Darlington to win. All the pundits picked Darlington to win. Look, Doncaster, I hope they don't go associate. I'm not too up to date with the rules, and they've obviously pulled out of a game. I think it was against Humber. It's not the greatest of leagues. I've said this a few times. But they pulled out of a fixture against Humber. So I hope they don't go associate. I hope they can put some case forward. Do you think teams... Yeah, let's just put this coming up. Let's see what it says. Do you think teams in the league should be reviewed and held to standards, the fields, facilities, coaches, infrastructures the teams are trying to enter the league? I think everyone should do that, but every team should have some form of safeguarding policy. So you can comment on it. Maybe, Tom, you are more welcome to interrupt me, by the way, because I know I don't shut up. But every club should have a business plan. These are all businesses. No one makes a penny from it, but every single club is a business. So, when I was, the one season I was GM in a mad show of a year when everyone just got up and left, I was trying to make it as a business, right? This is what we're going to do this season. This is what we're going to do next season. And this is what we'll do the third season. But players were in the loop. The team that I was running, none of the players like the colour of the kit. I was like, right, let's get all the players to pick, vote on different thingies of colours, different thingies of styles, and then it all went to hell. Well, let's not go into that. But yeah, I do think clubs should be reviewed. I think BAFTA should be doing something about that. I think that would be great because it stops clubs folding. I play for the Buccaneers, and we've got some great guys who played for other teams that are folded, and it's great hearing them talk about the stories, with that team. But it's also sad that that team doesn't exist. Like I've got loads of Holton Spartans merch. I've got all sorts. I see people all the time. I remember the good days. They should still be happening, but when people step down, not necessarily the right people go in. But no, yeah, in an ideal world, every league, every team would get checked out.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to be like first, just BAFTA's got to do more. Like everybody rings that bell, and like that doesn't get like great responsivity. But I do feel like if you want to make sure that sport is growing in a way that means that teams are sustainable and you're pushing people along the right path, like things like the health checks, for example, that's a great start. But why are they not being sort of reviewed almost game to game and more week to week through practice? Like, if you think about it, if any team wants to really go out on the field and be like competitive enough to where the sport starts to grow in the positive direction, to where there are loads of clubs who have a good infrastructure that is going to bring more people into the sport, because everybody that turns up to the sport sees, I've got a good number of coaches to help me. There's players around which means that, you're not going to be put in situations you shouldn't be in. Like, it's great that you have to have 35 players registered by a certain time in the preseason, but what about it's fine to just have 25 players turn up on game day? Like, that's not necessarily good for the sport when you find yourselves in those situations. And I feel like that is not something that a lot of people would want to do either, because it is going to put people in situations where there's pressure, because that's not the way that things are currently done. So I know that there would be pushback to that. So I'm not saying that, we need to have mandated 53-man rosters and you've got to have 40 guys a week at practice. That's unattainable. But I feel like there are probably some baseline minimum standards for sort of the kind of numbers that teams need to be able to maintain during the seasons, and the kind of things that they need to be doing to make sure that the players who are investing that time are being rewarded fairly for their experience. And so I feel like, putting some things in that, and it's clear that the threat of relegation is something that will make clubs start to do things. So, if it's a case that if you can't bring 30 players to 2 games in the season, and that's essentially the same as withdrawing it, not for next year, we're not ready for that step. But I do feel like until we start to think about maybe, staying on top of clubs a bit more through the season, then we're not going to get that growth that everybody wants, right?
Yeah, I think it's hard to maintain it. Obviously, I don't know how many people work for BAFA, volunteer for BAFA, are paid by BAFA. Maybe I should do. There are things I would put in. I'd put in a cap to how many players you can actually have in terms of, and I'm not talking like 50. I'm talking like 70. Are the clubs out there with more than 70 players? Not many, but there are.
There are in the pockets where other teams could potentially benefit from having players.
Yeah, but again, should your transfer cut-off be week 1? As soon as that first game's played, you can't transfer. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, look, there'll be coaches on, and again, we're all held accountable. So, if people disagree with me, that's not a problem. That's fine. That's what it's all about. Like, there'll be coaches out there that would hate that because, as soon as the team gets beat, are they in someone's ear? Do you want to join our club? It's stuff like that. But I think that's for me, that transfer deadline should be brought a little bit more forward because it's killing off clubs. Like we've been talking about, like I'm not going to mention any names, but there's teams out there that turn up to games with less than 30 players. It's not safe for the players, and in an ideal world, every player would have their own insurance covered, but let's crack on. That was a great question, that. Okay, on to the next game in that division, which was the game, I believe, for second spot, which has been confirmed. Please tell me if I'm wrong. Gateshead Senators, 28. Wakefield District Raiders, 20. Look, it sounds like that was a hell of a close game. As it stands, if this is the case, I believe Gateshead would play Leicester. Very tough game. But I think, great result for Gateshead. Does the transfer window present only benefit the successful clubs as they are the ones that have their hand in Europe? We'll go back to that question a bit. I'm going to leave it up there. I want to talk about this fixture before we do that because we go to Division 1 after that. Look, Humber haven't played this weekend. Great result for Gateshead. Very, very close game. For me, Wakefield can sign off the season. Look, they've had a good season. Not where they want to be, but push themselves on for next season. Have you any thoughts on that one, mate?
Not particularly, but I think, as you mentioned, Gateshead's obviously going to have a really difficult journey to Leicester. Obviously, Leicester seem like they're a bit of a buzzsaw at the moment. But I mean, it's just really cool that we're getting all of these like close games that mean stuff late at the end of the season. Like that's exactly what you really want in the sport, right? Like, it's a long season, so to have it being wrapped up in an exciting way is great.
I hate 50-0 results. It doesn't benefit you whatsoever. Just for context in this division, Darlington's team, I think, a second bottom. I think Lee Miners beat them in the pre-season friendly. So it's hell. Like, I mean, Darlington might have just been trying stuff. It's a bit of a tricky one, that league, to try and predict, because obviously we're in the business of trying to predict the results, so that the playoffs, I think there's going to be some shocks. I think there's going to be some absolute shocks in terms of the levels, because I always say some divisions are levels above other divisions. We'll go into that in a bit. Right, on this question, does the transfer window at present benefit these successful clubs as they're the ones that try their hand in Europe? It's not just the Prem clubs. So, my team has had a good season. We've recruited very well before the first game and after the first game. We've also lost a player or two to Prem teams who've promised them the world, and they might deliver the world. That's absolutely fine. But if you're playing this sport, we all want to play and win, and your team's lost 5 games, and do you really want to lose the next 3 games, or do you want to go somewhere else and potentially win the next 3 games? That's kind of the comment. But in the process of doing that, it's putting that team at risk of all the hard. You can't. People don't fathom how much hard work goes into setting up a team, into how the background work that's done. All that work can be uncut, like done. The team goes, by. because some players have left to join another team. So for me, I'd like to see the transfer deadline cut off a lot sooner. You got any thoughts on that?
I don't have a strong stance either way, because I don't think that the transfer deadline really makes any sense. But like, essentially, we are not professional. We are not necessarily in a space, I feel like, where the transfers are necessarily positive for teams. I feel like for the teams to be able to grow better, it's better for there to be that early cutoff and reduce people moving in season, and try to put it in a situation where if you've got a group of players together for that season, you can really try and keep them together and grow it, and see if you can build something to be sustainable going forward. The problem is I don't feel like you can trust that every club will do right by their players without the threat of them being able to transfer. And it's not necessarily for every situation. I can imagine there will be clubs that won't necessarily try and get them on the field as often as they would if there was to think that, well, if we don't actually get the second and third guy in, then, and when we're winning, then, you know, they might just want to go elsewhere. Or if you're losing by a lot, same sort of thing. Or, you know, maybe uni guys come on board thinking that they're going to get some good development, and actually the coaching there is not that up to standard. They're not getting the attention they need, and they're just stuck. That's the only place they can play football for the rest of the season. Like, there's lots of reasons, but essentially I just feel like it's a messy situation that without sort of either some very strong sort of logical thinking to plan rules that account for players' needs, while also sort of balancing the fact that we want to limit movement. But then again, as a coach, my perspective is completely different to a player. Like, players might want a lot of movement, but then I also feel like they might be missing some key elements in terms of the growth of the game. You know what I mean? It's a very difficult one to solve.
Yeah,
we need a clear direction as a sport.
Someone mentioned about like uni recruitment as well. I appreciate uni players. Majority of them will move home if they're going back home May, June. It's a double-edged sword, to be honest, because I agree with that part. You know, they should have the option if they're going back home to transfer. But without sounding like hot fuzz, the greater good of it should be, you know, the adult teams. This isn't a uni ball league. It's an adult one. But look, it's one of them. We could chat all day about that. Let's move on to your neck of the woods. Close. I don't know how close you are to these, but we in the SFC 1 West, Solent Thrashers 64, Somerset Wyverns 7.
Yeah, I think that's very much an expected result. Obviously, I think it's pretty much set that Somerset's going to go down. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like
no, you're right. There's no statistical way. However, kudos Somerset. It might have been game 7 or game 8, but you finally scored. Well done. I'm not saying that in sarcasm. The pressure that must have been on their offense must have been absolutely insane. You know, it's look, they've clearly got to go back down to come back up. They've conceded far too many points. I think just short of 300 because Bath has not updated their website, and they've scored just the points that they've scored. Mateo, I agree. Bring the transfer deadline forward. The time coaches put in is immense, only for players to leave, relocation, etc. I agree. Coaches don't get paid to do this as well. No one gets paid to do this. It is absolutely mental how much time we put. You know, we as players, we as coaches, we as management. You know, even to your water boys, to the people, you know, who volunteer. You know, whether it's on the committee, we put in so much effort and time. As soon as I've done this, I've got to make a phone call about a potential, you know, sponsor deal I'm trying to sort. It's such a busy sport. So no, I agree. The transfer deadline should be brought forward.
I do want to mention though, I do feel it's worth, like, yes, there are so many people that spend their time, but specifically on this side of coaches, like, this is a competitive sport, and I feel like there is an onus on you to try and be coaching better than the other coaches. Like, whether that is to be retaining players when you might be in a situation that they might want to leave at that point in the season, or whether it's because you want to try and be attractive to university players or to players that might sort of fall into that eligible category of people that might be likely to transfer. Until BAFA do something to change it, like, you've got to be doing something that incentivizes those players to want to be with you. Because, like, at the end of the day, yes, you're giving up your time, but at the same time, these players are paying for something. And so you need to make sure that you're doing everything you can to try and keep them. Like, yeah, I agree. It's really painful when those guys leave, and it can be sort of like, I thought you were in this for something else, and actually you've changed your mind or whatever. But like, they're not hostages, you know. Like,
I get that, but you know, so like for me, I was with Chester Romans. Chester Romans have fantastic coaches. I just got a great sponsorship deal sorted for Chester. The main reason for me leaving was because my job now means I have to work every Sunday. So the amount of training I can commit to, I mean, it's my last year playing anyway. I've said this, and you know, mine wasn't because of the coaches. Don't get me wrong. There's a person or two I wasn't particularly keen on, but you get that at every team you go to. But it was what the coaches at the Buccaneers sold to me. We've got some fantastic, brilliant coaches who will put their arm around you. You know, if you're feeling down, you know, that type of thing. You know, it's very much like a family run team. You know, and they've stuck by that all season. So that's where I think our club's done really well. We did recruit right up until the deadline. I mean, so me saying that, you know, it would have affected us because we got some great imports. But yeah, let's move on. We're going to keep. I feel like we're just going to keep coming back to this all day. But again, well done, Wyverns, for getting that one. Everyone predicted the Thrashers to win, and 90% of the public predicted the Thrashers to win. So you were all right for once. Right, on to the SFC 1 East. We had East Kent Mavericks 41, Essex Trident 7. Tom, you're up. Tell me what's going on here, mate.
So from what I heard, it was 21-0 to East Kent at the end of the first quarter. I think Essex have given us, like, they've been scrapping away, like they've been playing hard. We gave them a good hard fought game, 12-9 in like week 1 when they came and then played us at home. We ended up tying that game. I think both of those games were the sort where it's sort of like there were different circumstances going on. There were different reasons where I felt like we probably should have done considerably better than we did do on the day.
Yeah.
But like, that's nothing to do. Like, they were still a very good side, and easily, like, you know, a couple of things go the other way, they could have gone and won those games. And when they played us at home, they didn't have very many players. So I imagine that, you know, probably not carrying a massive squad down to East Kent. East Kent are just the type of team that, like, once they start feeling themselves and things get moving, like, they're very hard to sort of stop on their day, and especially at home. So, it's a pretty, like, not an unexpected result, but full credit to Essex. They did give it a good punt this season, and I feel like going back, if they end up going back to Div 2 the end of this season, then I think that I could see them sort of, you know, if they can keep some guys, they can definitely come back up and give it a good run.
Who, because we're going into this, who would, so let's say Essex as it stands are getting relegated. In fact, yes, that they're in that relegation game. Who would they more than likely play? Who's closer to them out of the? Is it, well, let's say it's Hereford or Oxford. Who's the closest to them teams to that team?
I think it would be Oxford. They would be in the East. Yeah, they would be in the East.
Do you see Essex doing anything against Oxford? I mean, Oxford have been solid all season.
I think the thing with the relegation game is, like, so one team's going to be going through the playoffs and, like, rounding into their peak of form, while the other team finishes their season a month ago and probably is falling off. Like, you know, it's not like you're playing both of these teams week 1 when they're ready to go. Like, you're playing one team who's in the lowest of the lows, and you're playing another team who's at the very peak of their powers. I would be stunned if any team realistically wins keeps their spot, because, like, how many teams have you been around that want to practice for 4 months when the season's done if they haven't got a month when the season's done if they haven't got playoffs? Like, you know, you've got to be ready for that game. And
yeah, to be honest, out of all the teams that are facing relegation, we're coming up to this team in a bit. Birmingham Bulls look absolutely brilliant, and they're in that battle. Birmingham Bulls, we'll talk about that Steelers game later, but they were holding their own. That team has come on leaps and bounds since the beginning of that season. So I think we're in for a few. I mean, whether Birmingham, look, we don't know who they're going to play. We don't know what it's all going to figure out. But I still think there's some absolute belter games coming up on this season. On to the next game. London Olympians 15, Kent Exiles 8. You're up again, buddy.
Yeah. So I think hats off to the Olympians. They played a really good game. It was just one where we just struggled. Didn't have our offensive line. We just didn't have a lot of bodies. We've had a lot of injuries and different personnel reasons why.
You need big boys. You need them big boys.
Yeah, every team does, man. And
Yeah.
I think pretty much every team that doesn't have the season you want, you start, and it's just like either side of the line, both sides of the line. It's always very hard to have a really strong unit of lots of players, and it's just been one of those seasons where every single possible this guy's hurt or this guy's got something that they're unavailable. They all just get stacked up at once. So yeah, not ideal, but I think obviously we fought really well. Lots of good stuff on defense. I thought the O's played a really good game on defense. They really made things difficult. And their offense like clearly wasn't firing 100% on all cylinders, but they managed to get things going in the run game when it counted, and just about managed to sort of take it over the line. In terms of the Olympians for like sort of their playoff run for next week, I think the Olympians are an interesting team because I think coming into the season wasn't too high on them. It sounded like they'd lost sort of quite a lot of players and had to sort of really recruit some fresh guys in. But from sort of watching the way that they've gone through the season, it seems quite clear they're quite they're squad with character. Like they seem to be sort of bought into each other. They all play hard, and I think that they're very resilient. Like I don't see that, like they don't look like a very typical sort of best in the division type of team. But if they can kind of drag you down with them in a playoff game, and it's sort of very tight back and forth, they seem like a very resilient squad to go and be able to win those games. So it will be interesting to see how it all shakes out. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't be sleeping on them. But equally, if you told me that they got blown out because the team just started going at the races, and then I wouldn't be shocked by that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we've got a comment to go to. I'm just going to go on some bit figures. 90% of the public picked the Olympians to win. 2 pundits picked the Olympians. That was myself and Sean. Please don't hate me. And Micah and Chris picked the Exiles. Look, I don't think they've smashed every team they've played this season. They've not scored as many points as other teams at the top. We've got a great question here of how do you think the Olympians match up with the other Div 1 contenders? Again, mate, this is a you question.
I just covered it in my last waffle. Don't worry. I think realistically though, we can finish with the Central before we kind of overview the South playoffs in total. But I think there's some interesting things to cover on that topic.
Okay. Now, and I'm trying my best not to swear. We are listening to you, by the way, guys. You've put some comments. I'm trying my best not to swear. I'm sure everyone at my club will love that. We're going to go to the mental league of Division 1. If anyone's got any arguments against me, I'll tell you to go away. No, I won't really. I'll listen to you. So the first one we're going to go to is Sandwell Steelers 26, Birmingham Bulls 22. Sandwell Steelers win, and for the second season in a row, they are champions of their league. They've won. But this was not an easy game. Bulls were ahead for a big majority of this game. If anyone in the comments was there, give us some information. We want to know what happened.
So I know that Sandwell lost the turnover battle from what I heard. Apparently they had a lot of issues on that side. Their OC on Twitter said it was a pretty scrappy game. Like it was one of those games that you shouldn't win, but they just sort of ended up pulling it out really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's the kind of thing you expect from a winning side. Like even if you make a mistake against a team like Birmingham, like given where they are on their record and how their season's gone, you would expect that they would kind of work to overcome it. But obviously hats off to Birmingham for for putting them in that situation, taking advantage of their mistakes and getting there. It's just, I think, when you're a team that hasn't been ahead very often, you're not really ready for it. And you kind of end up in those situations where when it's a bit tight, either guys just don't take that extra step up, or there's just that mental slip up, or even just as simple as we got too excited in the end of the third and we were winning. It felt like we were winning and you just weren't like 100% focused as you should be for that final push. And so, hats off to them for the good game. But yeah, it goes that way sometimes.
Before I go any further, 70% of the public picked the Steelers to win. And all 4 pundits picked the Steelers to win. However, since Birmingham told me that they've moved to their new pitch, thank God, I've been a big fan of them. I think they've done absolutely brilliant. And as it stands, they're potentially, obviously they're in this relegation game now. I would not want to play that team. I would. Samwell, here we go. Samwell showed good character. We Bulls took it to them with our run attack. Listen, I'm a massive. I think they've done really, really well this season to turn their season around. And are they going to go down? I don't know. Is that, if they play Leicester, is that going to be a good game to watch? Absolutely. Am I glad my team's not playing them? Too right. I would not want to play Bulls in a playoff relegation game. But well done to Samwell. I know they've had a few injuries. Coach Ben, with the typical pose he does. If you know, you know. But let's move on to the next game, which was also like ridiculous. Like I think we all got this one wrong. Shropshire Revolution 27. Staffordshire, I can't even say it. Surge 13. Where did this come from?
Beats me.
Just for context. Okay, everyone picked Surge to win out of the pundits. So thank you for ruining a perfect week. The public vote. Let's have a little look. Public vote was a little bit more close, 57% to 43%. But this is the division which has got so many. You wouldn't want to bet a single penny on this division if you were to start this again, knowing how unpredictable it is. Surge, very physical team. And again, it's their first year in Div 1. Kudos to you. The first year in Div 1. Shropshire Revolution, the offense just haven't been able to get it. It's not been working. But then it suddenly has. Well done to them. They've avoided relegation. I know they played Leicester Panthers in a pre-game season and didn't go well. They can now dust themselves off, recover, try and recruit, try and sort it out. Mate, what the hell?
Yeah, I mean, you just look through the scores and there are no transitive properties in this division. For example, you were talking about Bulls and how much of a competitive squad they are, and yet, when they travelled to Staffordshire put up 34 on them. And it's like, well, what's going on there? And then you see the Bulls play Shropshire and it's like 34 to 32. It's like, what like, legitimately, it's just every game is just going to be completely different. And it's fun when you get those types of divisions where it's just like different teams just match up really weirdly with each other. They've all got some sort of like slight edge. And yeah, it's what makes it exciting. But I mean, that last, who's going to get that last playoff spot then between Northampton and Staffordshire?
Mate, if anyone can comment and tell us who as it stands has got that 6th playoff spot. So my thing is it's between Surge, Merseyside Nighthawks, and Inverclyde. Is it Inverclyde?
Would it not be? So is it not the 2 seed from each division? So it not be?
It's based on. So the first one gets it, I believe. Again, if someone wants to tell me I'm wrong, I'll take that one on the chin, because every group chat that I'm in hasn't got a clue who's getting that 6th spot. I think as it stands, it's the Rams, Tigers get a bye. And then it's Alphas versus potentially, who's the other team in that Midlands League? Norfolk Knights, with Samwell playing whoever is sick. I don't know. I genuinely don't. And I'd love to be able to answer the question and tell you who is 6th. No one knows. Which isn't fair on the other teams, because let's just say you're Merseyside Nighthawks and you've just won your last game. Are we in the playoffs? We don't know. How do you prepare for that? when you get to these playoff games, you have to mentally prepare yourself quite a lot. So we don't know. If anyone knows, please fire a comment in.
I mean, feel free to throw any hate my way, but just drop whoever the runner-up is in the Scotland 2 and just throw in an extra team from the North or the Midlands. Like, I don't think any of those other Scottish teams outside of Glasgow are competitive enough to make it worthwhile to trip.
You know what? You are right, they're not. And it's a shame because I went to uni up north. I love Scotland, but there should be more. There should be more teams. We will get onto one of them games later and some bits and bobs that happened. But let's move on further north to the NFC 1 North. And we're going to talk about a great team here who I'm predicting are going to get promoted. Scunthorpe Alphas 35, Sheffield Giants 0. First of all, kudos to the Giants, who this was a rearranged fixture. They've turned up. I think they turned up with 30 players as well, so it wasn't like they were turning up with 22 players. Kudos to them. Alphas 35. Have they rested some players? More than likely. Have they been trying some different bits and bobs? More than likely. Are they still absolutely smashing it? Yes, they are. In terms of the predictions for this, we had. Let's have a little look here. It's not on here. I don't know why it's not on here. I'm sure a lot of people predicted Scunthorpe were winning that one. In terms of the pundits' predictions, we all picked Alphas. You got any comments on that one, mate?
Yeah, I mean, good luck to Sheffield going forward. Obviously, clearly didn't go how they wanted it to this year. It never feels good to go winless. But that's just how it is some years. Like, you just got to recoup and get on with it, right? And then on the offside, like Scunthorpe, clearly second best team in that division. And, seems like they're on the right form to, do all right in their first playoff matchup. And as we know, like, all these divisions match up with each other really weirdly. So no clue how that's going to go. But if you were to turn around and say that they win their first playoff matchup, like, you'd believe it based on the form they're in going into it.
Well, this is the team that my team might potentially play if we are able to overcome Lincoln in not next weekend and Humber in the playoff game. It's going to be an interesting one. Am I expecting a very poor Sheffield? No, I'm expecting a team that's going to fight to. This is a team that a few years ago was Prem, so they'll still have some players there who've got Prem experience. The best league in our context. But it'd be interesting to see what happens. Let's move on to the next fixture, which was a derby. It was Chester Romans were at home. It was Merseyside Nighthawks 29, Chester Romans 10. I think this was Merseyside from the get-go. I did see Chester Romans touchdown. It was a great touchdown, but I also seen some amazing work from the Nighthawks linebackers. In terms of the public's predictions on this one, 70% of the public predicted Nighthawks to win, and all the pundits also predicted Nighthawks to win, which absolutely kills me inside. Look, this is and I'll go on this one. Chester have had a bit of an issue in terms of player recruitment, which is a shame because as a player, you want to go play somewhere with great coaches. Chester Romans have fantastic coaches. They've got a great setup. Nighthawks have recruited very well from the likes of Manchester Titans. They've got some ex-Holton Spartans players who were at Titans who are now there. Really good players as well. But it's going to be an interesting one for both teams what to do off season. That's it. Season's finished. Maybe not for the Nighthawks. Are they going to be in the playoffs? We don't know. Does anyone know? But no. Any comments on it, mate? I mean,
no. But before we touch on the game from Scotland, which that'll be fun. Do we go? Which of the two divisions do you think is more competitive heading into the playoffs? Do you prefer the Midlands or the North?
Right. So the Midlands is more competitive in terms of the results. In terms of how close it is, clearly because Chester Romans took only 2 victories against Sheffield Giants, and that was a relegation game for both of them teams. Potential relegation game. Chester Romans showed massive character, but apart from that, Merseyside Nighthawks, although they've been beaten by the teams that are above them, they've not been battered in terms of how you'd think it would be. Yorkshire Rams and Scunthorpe Alphas are very, very, very good teams. I would love to see the Steelers get promoted. I've got a lot of love for the guys at Steelers, but I don't want them to go up and then come back down. Do you get what I mean? Like, the only reason Caesars for me aren't getting relegated this season is because Newcastle Vikings have forfeited the game. You look at the results of Caesars, it's not been great. It's not been great for the Vikings either, but the Vikings beat the Caesars. So I'd like the Steelers to kind of hang fire one year, if you get what I mean. Keep building and then go into that Premier League ready. Could they hold their own? Absolutely. But I think Alphas and Rams are very, very good teams.
And it's a really awkward spot because, like, sometimes you just end up, like, you might not be the best team in the division, and you might not necessarily, or like as in like the Division 1 North or South or whatever, you might not necessarily be the best team in that playoffs. You might not necessarily be the best team situated and ready to be promoted. But just because of the way that the schedule goes and the different opponents you have, like, sometimes you just find yourself in that situation where you're like, oh, we're here now, you know, and then you've got to kind of take on a different challenge to what you're anticipating. And I think a team I can imagine maybe, like, I'm not sure, like, I don't know enough about Wembley, but knowing what, like, the South Central is like, and, like, it's not the strongest division in the South, I don't think. Obviously, they've gone through, it's been pretty easy for them. Like, you could easily see that a couple of the teams that may be the most competitive in that playoff picture, they don't end up winning their games for whatever reason. And suddenly they end up finding themselves in the Prem. And it's like, are we ready for this? You don't know. Like, it's just really easy, I think, with how variable the other teams are for you to just end up in that situation.
Humber Warhawks, not last season, the season before, when they were in Div 2 and got promoted, spanked everyone in their way. They spanked everyone in the playoffs, got promoted. I don't know if they won the whole thing. I can't remember that far. When they were in my division, because I was playing for Chester Romans last year, they got beat comfortably pretty much every game. I think they might have got one result against Sheffield. Might be wrong on that. And then they've gone into that Div 2. Again, this is where, you know, when I say about, like, the standard levels between some Div 2s to other Div 2s, and they're spanking everyone. So there's some Div 1s that are considerably better than other Div 1s, but you see that in the playoffs, and we'll see that in Div 2 playoffs, Div 1 playoffs. It's going to be an interesting one.
I mean, there's the biggest argument is, should there be a 1 week inter-division game for each team? Like, every season, one inter-division game, you play the team, like, I don't know, say 2, 3, 4, or play whoever finished second in whichever divisions you guys are matched up with or something. You know, get some sort of teaser ahead of the playoffs as to how all these teams match up with each other, you know?
Yeah, I'm time conscious because we've got about 8 minutes, 9 minutes. We will go over, but I don't want to go over too much. Look, it's an interesting one. There's a good comment there. To be fair, Wembley, they did reach the Southern final last year in Div 1. Look, you'll know more about the Southern Leagues. I'll know more about the Northern Leagues. Humber were a false promotion, didn't make the final. Okay, interesting one.
Sorry, were you going to go back on that?
No, go on. You go.
No, I was going to say, in fairness to Jimmy, I wasn't necessarily saying, like, I don't know enough about Wembley to know whether they're absolutely barn spanking going to be the best team. Like, it's more of a comment on, like, you just see that there are just a lot of teams who will just have that easy run, and you just never actually know whether they've been tested, how good they actually are. And that's how you end up, I think, with those yo-yo teams. You know, things break right for them that season, but it just covers up the cracks. Actually, they're not quite there.
I really am looking forward to that game if we make the playoffs. Right, Humber were a false promotion, didn't make the final. Well, there you go. That maybe shows why they came up and went straight back down. We are going to move on now because I know this next one's going to take up a chunk of time. NFC 1 Scottish. Clyde Valley Blackhawks 26, Aberdeen Roughnecks 0. Can anyone comment below what happened at that game? Because I'm hearing that Aberdeen Roughnecks, not to quote Game of Thrones, but they took the knee for the whole of the second half. Why? I certainly wouldn't want to do it if my coach told me to do that. I never argue with coaches. Mostly I don't. But if I was told to do that, I don't know what you'd be like, Tom. I'd be like, absolutely not. It sounds like it was a very, very physical game, which is Scottish football. In terms of predictions, everyone predicted on the pundits. Let's have a little look. Everyone predicted Clyde Valley would win. The public vote, 80% to 20%. True. What have we got truth to? Tell us, Lewis, what have we got truth to? Did he bend a knee? Why did he bend a knee for the whole thing? I don't get it. It's their association year. They need out the second half due to player safety. Okay.
Do you know what? I'll come in here, Mateo, okay? I feel like the first people that you throw the blame at is not Aberdeen or Clyde Valley for how this game plays out. This is 100% like putting people in bad situations and expecting good things to happen. You've got an association team in a situation where they're having to self-ref and you expect things to just be fine. Like
no, I agree on that part. I agree on that part. Look, regardless of what I'm about to say, player safety always comes first. But look at the other team in that division, Rossendale Bucks. They've played the Titans. They beat the Nighthawks. The Nighthawks are a great team. They beat the Merseyside Nighthawks. You know, Rossendale are travelling to Mordor. I think they've got a game against next week against Inverclyde. You know,
Inverclyde, sorry.
It's a 10-hour trip. Look, I don't think we should comment anymore because we don't know the full context. If anyone wants to let us know about that or drop me a message on Insta, let us know. You know, it's something I'd like to talk about. It's sad because every game is a story in terms of if you play that game. I played a game. I'm going to be quick here, but a player ran at me and my mate James Burtonwood on a 45-degree angle, and James went, "Are you mental? Are you going to break your neck?" The very next play, neck goes in like that, and he screamed like one of them Star Wars characters dying. He got airlifted out of that game. Now he was fine. He was absolutely fine. He just sprained, or I don't know. He didn't break his neck. Great news. As soon as we found out he hadn't broke his neck and he was okay, and the game got called off. Don't get me wrong. So it was for the player safety. The game got called off, but there was, you know, we still talk about that to this day. Do you remember that guy? And I play with some of his teammates now, and they go, "Oh, not him." You know, you won't believe the amount of things he's done and stuff like that. Every game you're making memories and you're making adventures. That's not going to be one for the guys and the Roughnecks. But yeah, self-officiating, it's a bit of a nightmare. But a refs really want to go travelling up and down the country when they're getting spoken to. Like, yeah, I'm trying not to.
I mean, we don't need to stay on it forever, but I think it's something that we do need to have honest conversations about over the off-season, because realistically, for this sport to be pushed anywhere in the directions of the developments that are going on in Europe, then obviously we have to have enough referees to be able to officiate every game. However,
more teams, we need more refs.
Yeah, not even to have more teams. To have the amount of teams that we have now and play reasonable football, you have to have more refs. Yeah. And from what I can understand, the biggest pushback for that is there is a certain element of what it's like to officiate British American football games and whether it's worth the time and money equation of actually participating in doing that. So I think there is that sort of, you know, we also do need to look at what we're doing to make sure that actually referees do want to be a part of this so that we can be in this, because essentially this is not a sustainable situation and it's just going to set us back. And if we approach the problem from how do we like navigate around self-officiating instead of just making the decision that this is not acceptable and we just cannot have it going forward as like if we're going to go anywhere, then, you know, it's just going to keep ending up going wrong, you know?
Yeah, there's a few comments came in this one. We're going to move on from the Aberdeen game. I'm sure we'll get plenty of comments on that one. You know, there's been two major incidents this season with referees. One of the referees at that game is a mate of mine, and it's another issue. Yeah, this comment. It's another issue of isolation of Scottish football. Associate teams go straight to Div 1 level. I agree. This is what I'm saying about Edinburgh should have at least two teams. I'd like to see Glasgow. You know, there's other places. You know, Dundee could there be a team there? We're going to move on. We're literally way over time. So we're going to go into the Prem South. We'll be quick on these ones because we're all expecting these results anyway, public and pundits. Bristol.
Excuse me, I was not expecting Cambridgeshire to score a point.
Bristol Aztecs 67, Hereford Cheetahs 0. It was a result I think we were all predicting on that one. In terms of that league, obviously the Cheetahs and the Cats have to play each other. I know Cheetahs will have numbers issues. I don't know if that's been rectified as of yet, but that game, I'm not sure when that is, if that's this weekend.
So the Cats will need to beat the
by
Cheetahs
more than 2 points.
By more than 2 points. That's the one. But then after that, they both have a game. The Cheetahs, though, do have a winnable, not winnable, but at least they play the Rushmore Knights rather than the Cats having to play the London Blitz. So obviously, if Cambridge win, there's still a chance that actually Cheetahs could pull out a mad one and stay up. But it's not looking great.
On to the next result, and you are correct. They scored 10 points. London Warriors 79, Cambridgeshire Cats 10. Everyone was predicting a Warriors win, but predicting Cambridgeshire Cats to score, some people weren't, and there was 10 of them, 10 points. Are they going to carry that confidence into them last few very important games? You'd like to think so. London Warriors have conceded 36 points all season. So in that one game against the bottom Cambridgeshire Cats, they conceded nearly over 25% of their points. So well done, Cambridgeshire Cats, considering the team you're going up against. You got any comments on that one, mate? Or
the thing I am interested in is whether the Aztecs can come anywhere close to scoring as many points as what the Warriors have given up so far this season when they match up in a few weeks' time. Obviously, the Warriors played a Blitz as well coming up, playing away. It'll be interesting to see how the Blitz sort of stack up because the Blitz have been, I thought they seem to be putting themselves closer towards the Aztecs than they were last year. They seem to be doing some good things there to kind of get themselves back on the right foot. So, I think it's really, really fascinating to see how that plays out. But, unfortunately, that scrap at the bottom, fairly predictable.
95-yard kickoff return. Damn, that's good. Okay. Right, and then we move on to the Premier North. A very sad result for me. Newcastle Vikings, what the hell has happened? East Kilbride Pirates 32, Newcastle Vikings 0. I'm just made up Vikings played the game. The last thing I want to see is this team going to Associates, considering how much work's been put in to get them to Prem. Nothing really to say on that. I think all the pundits, let's have a little look here. All the pundits predicted East Kilbride to win, I believe. And the public vote was 94%. So 6% of the vote picked the Vikings. I'm assuming they were all Vikings players. Any comments?
Not really, but who do you like out of East Kilbride and Coventry?
Who do I like? I like both of them.
Only one of them is going to qualify for the playoffs.
Coventry for me. Coventry, I think Coventry beat the Titans as well. There's an absolute great coaching system going on at Coventry there. They all seem to be very united. I think the problem is for that league is Manchester are just getting better and better and better every game by a considerable amount. Manchester have a very good defence and their offence is catching up in terms of performance. You train against a great defence, it's only going to make your offence better if the right coaching structure.
I mean, they've got a very young QB, obviously taking over from somebody who was, very experienced there.
Yeah.
So, it makes sense that it would take some time for them to, all get up to speed together and get on the same page. And I think he starts over at UClan and just had a couple of decent seasons there, but obviously the pace of play in Div 1 Uni Ball completely different to the Prem. So, I mean, it's good to see that obviously they're on that upward trajectory. And here's the big question then. Do you think that either North team beats either South team?
Yes.
Yeah? Who do you see either of them? You see the Titans beating the Aztecs?
I don't think we've seen Titans in fourth gear yet, never mind fifth gear, mate. And there's a sixth gear there too.
Last season when they travelled up to them, the Aztecs didn't get thrown by playing at the Speedway. So
no, not at all, mate. Look, I'm not sticking up for a team here. I think the finals Titans and Warriors. I also know that the Titans going into that game had an incredible amount of injuries to their whole line. There's guys who play for them, and they were infuriated that they couldn't play. Play to the level they can play at. So look, that this is the thing about football. Anything can happen. There's no fixtures next week, by the way, so we can finish on that one in a bit. We'll go into that one in a second. Week 14, plenty of surprises. It's going to be very interesting going to the final games in 2 weeks' time. But yeah, week 14, brilliant. But going back to your comments, we've got a great thing here. Who plays the Warriors in the final? Aztecs or Titans? I think it's Titans. I know they've lost the game this season, but they've just come on leaps and bounds. And what people forget is this is a team in a rebuild, and they're still that good. So the Coventry game will be very interesting. Don't get me wrong, if Coventry can do that again, that'd be great for Coventry. This league has consistently been Titans, where it's a lot more closer. And then obviously, I thought Caesars were going to get relegated. It's clearly going to be Newcastle. I believe we're getting 2 teams added to that league this season, so that's going to be interesting. But Tom, I have a question for you.
Go on.
So, I want you to pick a team that's going to shock south of the border in the playoffs. What team is going to surprise people?
Oh. Now, I think that the Southern playoff picture is going to be interesting, but I do feel like it is all of the teams that could pull off a shock. I feel like you would expect it wouldn't be that shocking. So if the East Kent Mavericks end up being a road team in the playoffs and they win a game, I wouldn't be surprised at all. They put up a lot of points pretty regularly, and they do have a pretty good defense to go along with that. Solent, if they end up being a road playoff team, they're very competent setup. They've got a lot of talent there. They're definitely going to be competitive. There's a good chance that they could actually even run up the score in one of those games, And then Portsmouth, I don't expect anything from Portsmouth, respectively. I think that they've just ended up top of the pile of what is not a very good division in that South Central. There's a lot of heart and fight in that division, but it's probably it's not that great. I don't feel so. I think, and all what's it called, the Olympians and South Wales Warriors, if they end up winning, well, they're already top of the division going into their final games of the season before they sort that all out. So it wouldn't be surprising for either of them to go and win. Like, all of these teams are sort of one-loss teams right now, playing ready for their final game. So I don't think there really is a shock. I think the interesting thing will be Wembley. Like, how do Wembley stack up? Getting that extra week off. It's the same thing as Rushmore had last year. You're the undefeated team. You get the extra week of rest. You've got home field through the playoffs, assuming you go and win your games. Like, are you going to come out strong, or are one of these teams who've had a early test, already had a lot of tests through their season? Like, how do you respond to that coming into your ground? Like, that's the interesting one to watch for me.
You mentioned quite a few teams there. For me, the team in the North that I think is going to be quite a surprise, apart from my own team, of course. Yeah. I think Scunthorpe Alphas, they look really, really good. I'm seeing clips of them. What we've also got to remember is next week a lot of teams play, and then they play the playoffs the week after, especially with Div 2. I don't know what the Div 1 situation is like. So you might see teams like Humber resting players. They don't need to win. If they lose, they're still top. So well, not next week, yeah. So there's no games this week, folks. That has been week 14. Thank you very much for joining us. We tried to keep this as PG as possible this week due to the comments on swearing. Can I guarantee that next week? Absolutely not. But thank you very much for joining us. I've been Mateo, and I've
been Tom. Cheers, gents and ladies and everybody. Thank you for your time.
Tom, thank you very much for joining us this week. Folks, again, thank you very much for joining us after a very controversial week. We will see you next week for the same again. Again, no games on this weekend. What are we going to do with our time? Get in the playbook, get in the gym, get better. Folks, see you all later.